Gopinath Patanayak. Deliverance of Gopinath Patanayak, who has misappropriated some funds from the treasury. He was then through another circumstance was put on the chunga to be put to death, and then rescued. And then it was subsequently realized that it was just to scare him. Nonetheless, all the situation is all rectified, and Mahaprabhu was thinking about going to a Lalanath to get away from all the hubbub at Puri, because everyone was coming to Mahaprabhu asking him, "Can you rescue this guy, Gopinath Patanayak?" So then Kashi Mishra is talking to Maharaj Pratap Rudra. He speaks to Mahaprabhu and he speaks to the king. And we will see what happens next. We'll continue from text 116. Ekakashi Mishra Ashi Prabhura Charane Rajara Charitra Saba Kaila Nevadane. Kashi Mishra went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and informed him in detail of the king's intentions. What are the king's intentions? To increase the salary of Gopinath Patanayak. Anything else? I don't think so. Prabhu kahi Kashi Mishra e tumi karila Raja pratigraha tumi ama karaila. Upon hearing about Kashi Mishra's tactics with the king, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Kashi Mishra, what have you done? You have made me indirectly take help from the king." The purport: when the king heard the details of Gopinath Patanayak's unfortunate condemnation, he was induced to excuse his debt, in particular because he felt that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very sorry about this incident. The Lord did not like the idea that the money forfeited to Gopinath Patanayak was indirectly a contribution to him. Therefore, he immediately protested. Right, so he doubled his salary and forgave the debt. Mishra kahe suna prabhu raja ravachane akapate raja e kaila nevedane. Kashi Mishra said, "My dear Lord, the king has done this without reservations. Kindly hear his statement. Prabhu yena nahi janena taja amara lagia dui laksha kahan kodi dileka chadiya." Do you mind keeping the door open, Pandita? Is that all right? I find it a lot better. Otherwise it feels a little closed in for me. Thanks. The king said, "Speak to the Lord in such a way that he will not think, for my sake the king has forfeited 200,000 kahanas, or kodis." Purport: the kodi is like an American cent or Japanese yen. In the old medium of exchange, the first unit of currency was a small conch shell called a kodi. 4 kodis made 1 ganda, 20 gandas made 1 panna, 16 pannas made 1 kahana. Gopinath Patanayak owed the government 200,000 kahanas. The king absolved him of this debt, reappointed him to his post, and doubled his salary. Bhavanandera putra sabha mohora priyatama inhasabha kare ame deki atmazama. Inform Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that all the sons of Bhavananda Roy are especially dear to me. I consider them like members of my family. Hatayeva yahan yahan de adhikara kaya piye lute vilaya nakaron vichara. Therefore I have appointed them collectors in various places, and although they spend the government's money, eat, drink, plunder and distribute it as they like, I do not take them very seriously. Raja Mahindara Raja Kainu Ramaraya Ye Kaila Yeba Dila Nahi Lekadaya. I made Ramananda Rai the government of Raja Mahendri. There is practically no account of whatever money he took and distributed in that position. Gopinata E Mata Vishaya Kariya Duichari Laksha Kahan Rahete Kana. Having been appointed collector, Gopinath in the same way also generally spends 2,000 to 4,000 kahanas as he likes. Kichudeya, Kichunadeya, Nakari Vichara, Jana Sahita, Apritye Dukkha Paila Ebara. Gopinath Patanayak would collect some and pay some, spending it as he will, but I would not consider this very seriously. This time, however, he was put in trouble because of a misunderstanding with the prince. Jana eta kaila iha mui nahi janan, Bhavanandera putra sabe atmasama manon. The prince created this situation without my knowledge, but actually I consider all the sons of Bhavananda Rai to be like my relatives. Tanhalagi dravyachare iha matjane, sahaje mora priti hayatahasane. Because of my intimate relationship with him, I have absolved Gopinath Patanayak of all his debts. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not know this fact. Whatever I have done is because of my intimate relationship with the family of Bhavananda Rai. So this is Kashi Mishra speaking to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and telling him that, in an attempt to finally resolve this issue, telling him that actually the king didn't do it so much at your behest. He did it because he himself has a good relationship with Bhavananda Rai and his sons, his 5 sons. So he's trying to relieve Mahaprabhu's feelings of being involved politically, influencing the political conditions or the judgment and decisions of the king. He doesn't want the king to be making any sacrifices or decisions on his part. Primarily the forgiveness of the 200,000, whatever it is, kahana, debt. But the king has instructed Kashi Mishra to inform Mahaprabhu, convince him that the decisions were made independent of any of Mahaprabhu. Bhaktavatsalya ebe prakrata karila purvayena pancha pandave vipara tarila. You have now demonstrated your love for your devotees, just as when you previously saved the 5 Pandavas from great danger. So I believe the 5 sons of Ramananda Rai are equated to the 5 Pandavas. Of course, then that brings up the problem of Ramananda Rai, who's considered Vishaka. So it's like, how can he be one of the 5 Pandavas and Vishaka? But it's seen that on one level, because the Pandavas share a relationship of Shakya-rasa with Krishna, whereas the relationship of Vishaka, the Gopi Vishaka with Krishna, is one of Madhura Ras. So Ramananda Rai has a Madhura Ras appreciation of Mahaprabhu as like a small group. Ramananda Rai, Sarup Damodar, Gadadhar Pandit, Jagadananda Pandit, just a small group, have a Madhura Ras appreciation, and the Madhura Ras bhav. But also Ramananda Roy has Shakya Rasa, with friendship, intimate friendship on that level with Mahaprabhu. So, in respect to that relationship, he is seen as Arjuna. But in respect to his deeper Madhura Ras relationship, he is seen as representation of Vishaka. Ramananda Roy, along with his 5 sons, Panchaputra Sahite Ashi Patila Charane, Utana Prabhu Tanre Kaila Alingane. Ramananda Roy, along with his 5 sons, fell at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who lifted him up and embraced him. So, did I read the previous verse? Having heard from Kashi Mishra all these statements concerning the king's mentality, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy. At that time, Bhavananda Rai also arrived there. Fell at the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu, who lifted him up and embraced him. Ramananda Rai Adi Sabai Milila Bhavananda Rai Tabe Bali Tela Gila. Thus Ramananda Rai and all his brothers and their father met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then Bhavananda Rai began speaking. Tomara kinkara e sabamura kula e vipari raki prabhu puna nila mula. All these members of my family, he said, are your eternal servants. You have saved us from this great danger. Therefore you have purchased us for a proper price. Bhakta vatsalya ebe prakata karila purvayena pancha pandave vipare tarila. You have now demonstrated your love for your devotees, just as when you previously saved the 5 Pandavas from great danger. Netadati mate gopinata charane padila rajara kripa vritanta sakala kahila. Gopinath Patanayak, his head covered with a silken wrapper, fell at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and described in detail the king's mercy toward him. Bakukode bada ara dviguna martana kaila punaha vishaya diya netadati paraila. The king has excused me for the balance due, he said. He has reappointed me to my post by honouring me with a silken cloth and has doubled my salary. Kahan jangera upada se marana pramada, kahan neta dati puna esaba prasada. I was lifted upon the changa to be killed, but on the contrary, I was honoured with a silken cloth. This is all your mercy. Changera upare tomara charana dhyana kailon charana smarana prabhave e pala pailon. On the changa I began meditating upon your lotus feet, and the power of that remembrance has yielded all these results. Loke chamatkara mora e sabadekia prasamse tomara kripa mahimagana. Struck with wonder by my affairs, the populace is glorifying the greatness of your mercy. Kintu tomara smaranera nahi e mukyapala palabasa e yate vishaya chanchala. However, my Lord, these are not the principal results of meditating upon your lotus feet. Material opulence is very flickering. Therefore, it is simply a glimpse of the result of your mercy. Ramarai vaninate kaila nirvishaya se kripa monte nahi yate chehaya jai Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Your real mercy has been granted to Ramananda Rai and Vaninath Rai. You have decided to, and Vaninath Rai, you have detached them from all material opulence. I think I have not been favoured by such mercy. Shuddha kripakara goshani gucha havishaya nirvina hainu mote vishaya nahaya. Kindly bestow upon me your mercy so that I may also become renounced. I am no longer interested in material enjoyment. Prabhu kahe sannyasi abe haiba panchajana kutamba bahulya tomara kekare barana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, if you all adopt the renounced order and lose interest in dealing with pounds, shillings and pence, who will take charge of maintaining your large family? Mahavishaya karakiba virakta udasa janme janme tumi pancha morani jadasa. Whether you are involved in material activities or become completely renounced, you 5 brothers are all my eternal servants, birth after birth. Kintu mora kariha eka agya palana vyayana kariha kitchu rajara muladana. However, just obey one order from me. Do not spend any of the king's revenue. Rajara muladana diya ye kitchu labhyahaya se dana kariha nana dharame karame vyaya. First, you should pay the revenue due to the king, and then you may spend the balance for religious and fruitive activities. Dharme karme vyaya. Asad vyaya na kariha yate duilokayaya etabali sabakare dilena vidaya. Don't spend a farthing for sinful activities for which you will be the loser both in this life and the next. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bade them farewell. Rayera gare prabhura kripa vivarta kahila bhaktavatsalya guna yate vyakta haila. Thus, the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was spoken of in the family of Bhavananda Roy. That mercy was clearly demonstrated, although it appeared to be something different. Purport: the result of advancement in spiritual knowledge is not material improvement, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Gopinath Patanaik how to use material opulence without incurring reactions to sinful life. From this advice, it appeared that the Lord encouraged Gopinath Patanaik to enhance his material condition. Actually, however, he did not. In fact, this was but a manifestation of his great affection for his devotee. Sabaya alingya prabhu vidaya yabedila haridvani kare saba bhakta utigela. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced them all and bade them farewell. Then all the devotees got up and left, loudly chanting the holy name of Hari. We'll see how close we are. We're getting towards the end. Prabhura kripa deki sabara haila chamatkara tahara pujite nare prabhura vyavahara. Seeing the extraordinary mercy of the Lord granted to the family of Bhavananda Roy, everyone was struck with wonder. They could not understand the behavior of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Tara sabe yare kripa karite sadila ama haite kichunahi prabhu tabe kahila. Indeed, when all the devotees had requested the Lord to bestow his mercy upon Gopinath Patanayak, the Lord had replied that he could do nothing. Gopinath tera ninda ara apana nirveda e matra kahila ihara na bujebe beda. I have simply described the chastisement of Gopinath Patanayak and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's indifference. But the deep meaning of this behavior is very difficult to understand. Kashi Meshre na sadila rajare na sadila udyoga vina Mahaprabhu eta paladila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave so much to Gopinath Patanayak without directly making requests of either Kashi Mishra or the king. Chaitanya Charitra e Paramagambira se bujje tanra pare yanra manadira. The intentions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are so deep that one can understand them only if he has complete faith and service to the lotus feet of the Lord. Ye ihan shune prabhura vatsalya prakasha prema bhakti paya tanra viparayaye nasha. Whether or not one understands it, if one hears of this incident concerning Gopinath Patanayak's activities and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's causeless mercy upon him, certainly he will be promoted to the platform of ecstatic love for the Lord, and for him all dangers will be nullified. Sri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yari Asha, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahi Krishna Dasa, praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy. I, Krishna Das, narrate Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps.
Are there descendants of Ramananda Roy and his 5 sons?
Probably. I'm not sure about Ramananda Roy. Bhavananda Roy. And one of the sons was Ramananda Roy. So probably, I'd imagine so. But, I don't know. Maybe you could track them down. There probably is, I'd imagine. But you'd have to do some research, starting in Orissa.
I was just wondering if in the Saraswati Math we would have contact with...
No, I mean, you could ask the question, are there descendants of all the other, even more prominent, not that Ramananda Roy is less prominent, but let's just say the other prominent associates of Mahaprabhu, are their descendants? Yeah, there are descendants. They have in Bengal these places called Shripats, and they are the locations where the various parishads of Mahaprabhu established their temples and a lineage developed. So that became the spiritual, what's the word? Spiritual heart or whatever. There's another word. For a tradition, a lineage that grew from them. And often it's run by descendants of that personality. And then they may have branched out to other places, of course, because there'd be many descendants as the family tree spreads. But our conception is not to be too concerned with family lineage, but more concerned with the original substance of the teaching. So there's many people now today who can trace their family lineage back to Nityananda Prabhu or Advaita Acharya or others. And they belong to the particular... These lineages are called parivaras, or what's the other name? Vamshi. So you get Nityananda Vamsha, Advaita Vamsha. It's like a family, parivar, a line, family line. And these were traditionally known as Goswamis, Jati Goswamis. Goswamis coming in a line, in a birth line. And at one stage, or traditionally they had something of a monopoly on the teaching and initiation into teaching of an initiation into Mahaprabhu's sampradaya, Mahaprabhu's conception, Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In Bengal at least. In Vrindavan, it was perhaps the Babajis in Vrindavan. But nonetheless, there was a monopoly there. And Saraswati Thakur bypassed that. He discarded that in the interest of saying that having a monopoly on something, material monopoly, firstly, spiritual substance cannot be monopolized. Krishna cannot be confined to any particular group or family. And secondly, if you monopolize it, if you do try and monopolize it that way, then you get what Guru Maharaj described as often as just a succession of bodies. So it just becomes a family tradition, a family business, without any spiritual substance. And he says the mantras being passed down, they become dead because there's no spiritual vitality. So Saraswati Thakur did away with all of that. And that is one primary reason why he had many enemies in Bengal and other places, but Bengal particularly, because he discarded that whole system, broke the monopoly, and they didn't like that because that was their source of wealth and their source of status in society. So their kanak and their pratishta had been damaged by Saraswati Thakur. So they didn't like that. But that's not to say that they're all bogus. It's not to draw that conclusion. It's the conclusion to be drawn is that Mahaprabhu's message can't be monopolized like that. Can't be just confined to a family lineage. But nonetheless, some people are attracted to form, and tradition is one type of form, like the way a tradition manifests itself. You have to stick with it. That's an attachment to form. Substance may change its shape and flow in a zigzag fashion, whereas tradition won't be zigzag. Tradition will be run according to tradition. So, but some people that cannot appreciate that concept of the free will of divine revelation, they need the form. So even today, we have people from Saraswati Thakur's wider family looking for form. They need the form for their faith, for what we can say is fledgling faith. So there is now even a little bit of a renaissance of the caste Goswamis, the neo Goswamis, who have realized that there's a big market in the West for people with fledgling faith that need form for their faith. So just recently they're now coming out and dressing a bit more fancy than usual and traveling around the world and building their little empires. But not to say that they have nothing to offer. We have to be a little careful. But if they're teaching that we are the real thing, and Saraswati Thakur, he was an upstart, and here now we've come to save the situation, then they can be considered to be bogus, essentially. Because it's just a repeat of what they've tried to do all along, which is monopolize Mahaprabhu's teachings, treating it almost as a family business. The real ones, the spiritually advanced ones, understand how the spiritual substance reveals itself. And they're not going to tell you that we have a monopoly on it. And they're very humble and unassuming people. So you can see there's differences. Advaita Bhavan in Navadvip is run by one devotee who is a descendant of Advaita Acharya. And you stayed there. And Devananda stayed there. Yes, and he is a very humble, unassuming.
Very sweet.
Yeah, and he's a disciple of Gurudev, right?
Of Advaita Acharya, isn't it?
Yeah. He has a deity of Advaita Acharya.
And many others.
Yeah, many shalagrams, etc.
Advaita.
Yes. So he is a descendant of Advaita Acharya. But he understands that just being in the family of someone doesn't guarantee that you're a holder of spiritual adhikara, that you're spiritually advanced necessarily. I'm not making any...
4 years, wasn't he?
Sorry?
He was with Gurudev for 4 years.
Yeah, I heard he took initiation from Gurudev.
Yeah, so, it was all sorted out and smoothed.
Well, my point here is that...
It was necessary to smooth, Gurudev would have done.
Yeah. So my point is that he is a descendant of Advaita Acharya, but he recognizes the divinity of Srila Gurudev as someone worthy of surrendering to. He's not one to say, I'm a descendant of Advaita Acharya, I'm the one that should be acting as guru around here.
Not like that, yeah.
So what I'm saying is that there are some that recognize actually how spiritual substance reveals itself in the world. And then there are others who realize that because of their family connection, they can capitalize on it and really build quite a name for themselves and build up a big bank balance and all the prestige that comes with being an international guru. And surely they can do it. There is a big market for such a thing. Because as to reiterate, many people need that form for their faith. They need to have some kind of form. They can't see beyond the form. So for their faith, they need the form. So if someone tells them, I'm a descendant of Nityananda Prabhu, they're like, wow.
It is a little,
They need that.
Even
Of course, we have to give it the respect it's
yes.
worth, but at the same time, if they are denying the validity of our Purva Acharyas
yeah, of course.
and the ability of divine substance to spread itself however it chooses, then we have to call a spade a spade.
Of course.
Our fidelity first is to the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is that spiritual substance does not need to be constrained inside a material vessel of someone else's dictate. So you can't dictate that spiritual truth has to come down through this family line.
Yes.
And even above that, that's the general conception that we follow. And above that is fidelity to the approach of the previous acharyas. And the Saraswati Thakur was himself specifically fought against to demonopolize that, to make spiritual truth accessible to those who sought it, outside of any monopoly or any family tree that or whatever, to break that imposition on spiritual revelation that existed that existed prior to Saraswati Thakur. That was a tradition prior to Saraswati Thakur, pretty much. But so there's quite a few around, descendants of Mahaprabhu's associates. The sons of Bhavananda Roy. Bhavananda Roy is one of the Aryan devotees. So there are kind of two groups of devotees in Jagannath Puri, the Aryan devotees, you could say, and the Bengali devotees. And
can you comment on how we can, in our devotional life, practicing life, more deal with these kinds of things that are maybe perhaps more subtly, these kinds of trends of lineage or external factors, essentially.
Yeah.
How to negotiate that when it's perhaps less subtle, more subtle and less blatantly obvious. Such as lineage, or,
like form versus substance.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and how to discriminate if it's on a more subtle level? How to discriminate between the two, harmonize the two? Yeah, well, it can get tricky, and it all depends on the spiritual maturity and advancement of the person. In the beginning stages, some form is necessary. It is definitely necessary. And the obvious example of that is Mahaprabhu taking sannyas. He didn't need to take sannyas, but he needed for others to appreciate his message. They needed that form. They couldn't although the content of his message didn't change before sannyas and after sannyas. It's not like he started teaching a different philosophy. It was the exact same thing. But people could appreciate it because they needed form. To have faith in his message, he needed to change his form because they needed that for their faith, to put their faith in. So often in the beginning stages, some form is necessary. In fact, it's almost always necessary, because we're presenting our message of going beyond form to people that know nothing but form. All, you say, outside society, all its values are form-based. It runs on a value system which is rooted in form. All judgments of value are made on form. So when we try and get them to attach value to spiritual substance, they have to be presented with some kind of form that they can link to, that they can have faith in initially. But then gradually, that form must dissolve. So although initially they will put their faith in something that is form-based, that represents or contains as a vehicle for the spiritual inner substance, they put their faith in that. Eventually that should erode and fade away, and their faith should transition to exclusively faith in the spiritual substance, not in the container that carries it. So Mahaprabhu's sannyas essentially was just like a vehicle, a form through which people could have faith in what he was delivering, in what that vehicle was carrying. And through that process of faith, although it's mixed, although their form was essential for their faith, as the faith grows, the form, the part that is placed on the form, that will fade away. The faith that is in the form will fade away, and the faith will exclusively be based on the substance. So it's a transition from form-based faith to substance-based faith. And the ratio of substance-based faith to form-based faith will change as a person's faith develops, as a person grows spiritually. But if someone is rooted particularly in the physical plane, then they need absolutely a certain form, something that they can appreciate with a form-based value system in order to put faith in it.
But Pandita, is it that you're asking how can we recognize that this form is valuable? Isn't it what we discussed the other day, that was how can we recognize a pure devotee? And we came to the conclusion that it was both a mix of security and a mercy, which means that we are not the only we are not the only one who decides which person is a real devotee.
Yeah,
is
but
it related to this? Your question? How to recognize a pure devotee in the end, or no?
Not so much about that, but like just negotiating, like I said, like negotiating your way within your practicing life through matters of form versus substance. And
yes,
you said that ratio.
That ratio will change. Yeah. And Guru Maharaj described himself as a form breaker, but he's also said form is necessary in the beginning stages. But this is exactly the point we're describing. And in terms of how much form, or whether the form is valid, well, that depends on whether it serves the substance.
Exactly. And
that is the measure. If it's serving the substance, then it's valid. But how much form is needed depends again on the spiritual development of the audience, the person. Some people need more form relative to substance, some people less. And ultimately there's none, it's all substance. So this concept is called Yukta Vairagya, and it's described by Rupa Goswami as Vairagya means renunciation, and Yukta means like applied or realistic renunciation, practical renunciation. So renunciation is not done just as in abandoning all of the resources of the environment, just letting go of everything, but using them for spiritual purpose. So the resources of the environment, including one's body, because ultimately one's body is the environment, just very closer to the soul, then using one's body and everything else of the environment, that's all form. Everything in this world is form, gross or subtle. So how to use that form is the science or whatever, the application of yukta vairagya, applied renunciation. So what determines whether it's yukta vairagya or not? Well, it's a shifting scale. Again, for some people, what is necessary is more form-based. It may be largely form-based. So a person may be appreciating prasadam because it tastes really nice. And that's kind of form-based. And then ultimately a person is appreciating prasadam. There's no physical taste at all involved. They're tasting the actual prasad, the mercy of the Lord. So, both the yukta vairagya is eating the prasad of the Lord, and say on one level, on the beginning level, it gives pleasure to the taste buds. But on the ultimate level, there's no form at all because the person is directly appreciating the real spiritual substance of the prasad. So using one's senses and the items of the environment is all form-based, but the level to which it is form and simply mechanically using the form to try and appreciate substance. So it might be a mechanical harnessing of items and resources and even using one's body to perform devotional service. That may be largely form-based, although one has an aspiration to go transcend that form. At later stages, a person may be going through the exact same motions, using the exact same items, using one's body, but it's substance-based. There's no inner connection to the form. And ultimately that must be done. But on the process to breaking the form, on the way to do that, the process to do that is using form to break one's attachment to form, essentially. Just like Mahaprabhu took sannyas, that's form, to break people's attachment to form. So that's the science of yukta vairagya, and it requires a certain nuanced application. But ultimately, the measure is whether it is serving a spiritual purpose. If the form is serving a spiritual purpose, then it's a proper utilization of it. Did you have a?
It's interesting to think how in the beginning the form is the start, trying to produce substance, whereas in the end, substance is the beginning, producing form. So meaning the substance creates the external environment in which, that substance is produced.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the spiritual substance cultivated in the temple gives rise to all the form of the temple. Yeah. The altar and the mridanga and the pictures, etc. They're all form. But you're right. You say that form springs from the substance of what is going on in the temple.
It's beautiful.
Ultimately, all paraphernalia is redundant because it's ultimately one's heart. The substance lies in one's heart. And in this regard, Guru Maharaj says that people talk about tilak and tulsi and saying, it's absolutely essential. See, on one level, you should never take off your tulsi beads. Gurudev has said this. And Param Gurudev has also said on another level, all these things are form on the ultimate level.
What was that you said about
Tulsi beads. On the ultimate level, that one's bhakti is not dependent on tulsi beads or tilak or anything like that. These are accoutrements that actually reflect inner substance. So in the beginning, another way of looking at it is the beginning, one uses form to try and produce substance. but in the end, the substance that one has is reflected in the form. That was the point you made, right? So the substance is, it's a difference between Vaidhi Bhakti and Raga Bhakti. In the beginning, Vaidhi Bhakti, you using the articles, the form of the environment, to perform ritualistic activities, to produce substance. And what is that substance? That substance is the heart, called Raga. And once the Raga is developed, then the heart dictates the environment. So whatever's going on in the heart is reflected in the items used. So it's the heart controlling. So previously it's form-based. Everything is quantified. But with Raga Bhakti, then that begins to dictate exactly what's going on. So for instance, rather than taking some flowers and then using them to try and cultivate a quality of the heart, if you have that quality of the heart, then you go and get the flower. So the flower is offering the flower as a product of one's substance, the substance one has, rather than an item that's being used to try and produce the substance. So in terms of neck beads, in the beginning stages, one is wearing neck beads because they're told to, because it's auspicious. It's the tulsi wood, and that's what devotees do. And it reminds them of the identity they're trying to create. But in the end, when one's heart is captured, they want to wear tulsi because they have a heart connection to Krishna, and everything that's dear to Krishna is also becomes dear to the devotee, and they want to immerse themselves in that thing, that world in which they have love and devotion for.
Yeah. What was the definition of the word raga you gave the other day?
Raga just means feeling, passion, attachment, qualities of the heart.
There's no notion of spontaneous there, right?
The heart is spontaneous.
Oh, okay, obviously.
Yeah. Means without any rational calculation, the heart is captured. Because, like some people say now that, like the form-based, wearing certain clothes is all form-based. So why don't we do away with wearing certain, like religious clothing, dhotis, etc. And you could say, yes, ultimately that's true. But at the same time, if one is immersed in a particular culture, or if one becomes a fan of a particular person, then automatically the exterior, if the heart is dedicated, captured by a particular vibration or culture, then all of the other layers that form around the heart, such as the mind, the intellect, physical body, and the layer outside the physical body, the clothing, they all reflect the quality of the heart. So if one's heart is immersed in Antya-lila, then all of the other layers outside of that will also reflect the condition of the heart. The neck beads, the shaved head, the dhoti, the kurta, they're all reflections of what's going on in the heart. Whereas in the beginning stages, the progression is the other way. You want your heart to be captured, so you start dressing like someone whose heart is captured. Wearing the neck beads and shaving your head, because you want to be like that. So it's like someone that's like a fan of a rock band or a punk band or whatever. If someone whose heart is captured by that culture, naturally they're going to dress like that.
What about the Krishna West?
But
very high devotees sometimes of that line.
Yeah, well, I was saying that with that concept in mind. So what I said addresses that concept.
So there's something.
Yes, it's not a complete perspective that they have. It's a knee-jerk reaction to not having one's people appreciating or people wearing the external trappings, all the paraphernalia, using the paraphernalia without having their heart captured. So it all becomes dry. And when something becomes dry and mechanical, you go, oh, it's not working. We have to chuck it out. But when one's heart is captured by something, saturated by something, then the external expression represents that. And that's the real thing. But if they're still at the stage of putting on the external garments, etc., in an attempt to capture the heart, then on one level you say, oh, that's superficial, that's form-based. It's not real. It's just you're just playing dress up. Let's be real and just wear normal clothes. So it comes from a place of wanting to do away with superficiality, but not realizing that the end goal of something is the cultivation of the internal substance, the capturing of the heart. And then all of these things become natural. They become a product of immersing oneself in a culture which uses such items. But there's other ways. I mean, if their basic argument is that to preach, for people to accept, to understand, you don't want to look too alien. Mm-hmm. So you want to break down as many hard barriers as possible. But that's already done. A devotee in the concept of yukta vairagya, a devotee does whatever is necessary in their service. So if you need to, wear a leather jacket, preferably goat leather, do it. Or crocodile leather or something, maybe crocodile skin jacket. When you're going to the party to preach. But the thing is, that it's already there. If someone has a certain level of spiritual, it all depends on adhikar. Once a person or a group develops a certain level of adhikar, all of these things become automatically resolved. They become axiomatic. How to behave becomes axiomatic. It's when there is not much spiritual adhikar that these things become an issue. How do we dress? How can we get people to appreciate us more? We have to serve pizza instead of curry, and all this kind of thing. When one develops a certain level of spiritual advancement, they know exactly the appropriate way of acting in any given set of circumstances, in any given time, place, or circumstance. And the devotee does that. They do that automatically. They know exactly when to maybe wear devotional clothes and when to wear kami clothes. What is appropriate. There's no need to set an edict or set a particular standard where we're abolishing these clothes and we're introducing these clothes. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. And what's it a knee-jerk reaction to? The fact that people are wearing the clothes, not representing the inner substance, but trying to wear the clothes purely form-based to find the inner substance. So it's still in the artificial phase, which again shows that there's a pervasive lack of adhikar. That's the root of the problem. Because once the Krishna consciousness is there, then all of the other externalities, they fall into place. Whereas you can try and arrange all the externalities as precisely and pristinely as possible, but if there's no spiritual adhikar, you're always going to argue about the arrangement of the external factors, the form. The form is always going to be a problem when there's no spiritual advancement. But when there's spiritual advancement, all the form considerations automatically fall into place. So this argument about dress and culture and stuff is really, from someone, from a perspective of, let's say, Gurudev's perspective, did he concern himself with such things? No, not at all. And we can say Prabhupada did to a certain extent because he was dealing with a preaching field and he was dealing with people who needed to hear something about practicalities. But he would say, do what you need to do to preach. If it's better to wear some robes or if it's better to wear some jeans, then do it. So it's all a very simple thing, but, when a person is missing the substance, then they start to argue about simple things. They start to look in some very simple. They start to look at the superficialities in an attempt to solve their problems. So if there's no spiritual substance, then they look for a social fix. There must be social reasons why we're not flourishing. There must be cultural reasons. Why aren't people accepting our message? It's because I've got a seeker, and they just thought, nah, that freaked them out. But it's really these considerations, not because devotees can adapt, but also if there's spiritual substance, ultimately that's what generates, that's the engine to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. It's the spiritual substance. And with that spiritual substance, you can immediately, automatically know how to present form in terms of having people accept that substance. What face to put. So there's no duplicity or anything like that. It's simply what vehicle to use to best spread the spiritual substance. Form. Form versus substance. It's always going to be there. But ultimately, as Guru Maharaj says, substance is everything. Form is there. The ultimate principle is that form is there to support the substance. And to the extent that it supports the substance, then it can be used. To the extent that it doesn't, then it's to be discarded. So that's the measure. The litmus test of what form is usable or not is whether it's serving the purpose of development, appreciation of the spiritual substance. To the extent that it is, it can be used. And to the extent that it isn't, it's to be discarded. And of course that's yukta vairagya. That's qualified, intelligent renunciation. That's the whole basis of Rupa Goswami's teaching, actually. And we can see the modern expression of that in Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who Guru Maharaj says that the entire tenor of his preaching, his conception, was that yukta vairagya of Rupa Goswami, which he expressed in a verse, Matala Harijana Vishaya Rangi Pujala Ragapata Gaurava Bhangi. Gurudev later modified it to Kirtana Rangi. But because some people might not understand it. But Vishaya Rangi means interacting with all of the resources, all the form of the environment, as externally would a Vishayi, a sense enjoyer, an exploiter. So it may look the same in many respects, but those are being offered. All of it is not being used selfishly, but being dedicated in service, devotional service. So Matala Harijana Vishaya Rangi, that's the modern implementation of Rupa Goswami's Yukta Vairagya conception. And of course, Pujala Ragapata Gaurava Bhangi, that process will eventually lead to the Ragapat, to the path of Raga Bhakti, where there's, say, no form. Everything is generally form. The Yukta Vairagya is stripped right down to the bare necessities. See the way the Goswamis lived. That is Ragapata. That's an expression of someone immersed in the Ragapata. So Saraswati Thakur is like, don't try and rush into the complete removal of form and just go think that everything, your life is being dictated by raga. Your devotion is raga based. Because that will lead to problems. If your heart is still attracted to form and you try and prematurely renounce it, then you'll self-sabotage your progress, or you can conflate your raga practices with actual devotion, actual raga. You delude and cheat yourself. So he said, worship it from a distance. Pujala Ragapata, worship the raga path. Gaurava Bhange, and Bhange means to break, Gaurava means kind of an opulence or a grandeur, and that grandeur will slowly break away through worshipping it. Through what? Vishaya Range, Matala Harijana Vishaya. Gurudev changed it, Kirtana Range, so it's less liable to misinterpretation. So Matala Harijana Kirtana Range. So through Kirtan, through worshipping the path of Raga Bhakti through Kirtan, then gradually the grandeur of the Vaidhi Bhakti conception will be broken, and the Ragapat will naturally reveal itself, naturally descend into the heart. And then there will be no form-based Bhakti. Previous to that, it was all form-based. Vishaya Range is like using everything, all the resources, all the form. Whereas the Goswamis weren't doing that so much. They occupied the highest position. But that cannot be imitated. To achieve that, one must have a certain amount of form-based bhakti. Form-based bhakti leads to formless-based bhakti, or ragapata, eventually. But again, it's just another way of expressing the concept of using form to overcome form. Yukta Vairagya. And in that, once one understands that principle, then there's no need to set strict standards of what cannot be used and what can't be used. In terms of dress, for instance, as some people are trying to do. Or all other cultural trappings. Like we have to do away with this and include this. Because that goes against the principle of Yukta Vairagya and Saraswati Thakur's principle. Use whatever is necessary in your service, in your devotional service. Whatever is necessary. You don't say you only have to dress like this. Anyway, it's just, if we look at it sociologically, it's probably just a knee-jerk reaction to certain elements going, you have to dress like this. If you don't dress like us, then you're not a devotee. And again, the basic problem is a lack of spiritual maturity. People squabble over how they dress. Anyway, we should finish up. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Kibu. Oh, we got to sing, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to sing? You're going to sing? Hari Haray Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhata Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopal Bhakta Dasa Raghunatha
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sri Dhadev Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Rukunu Guru Varg ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Vishva Vareni Srila A.C. Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai, Meri Vaishnav Mandala ki jai, Samari Bhakti Vrinda ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat West London ki jai, Sri what's the special day today? It is the anniversary of the Sri Hapanya, Sri Radha Guru Gaura Radha Gopinath Jew installation at Hapanya Dham ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai.